what about this? Who would have thought? Who would have thought this would have happened? Hands up those that thought this wouldn't happen. Yeah. It's my job as the groom to thank everyone for coming along, and for the wonderful gifts, and for the many thanks and greetings that both Heather and I have received over the last, well, almost 4 years, I think, since we got together, and certainly over the last 12 to 18 months that we decided to take it the one step further. And, I use the word step, like roll. Well, actually, roll further is probably better for me. One of the people that I spoke to in the last few days actually said to me, she said, "Now that you're actually married, are you going to slow down?" Well, I've actually already slowed down, because I used to drive this chair that I happily sit in at the highest speed when I was going around, but as I've got older, I found the people that are with me can't keep up. So yes, the answer to the question is yes, I actually have slowed down. Elaine, Dot and Di, Adam, who's affectionately been called Priscilla, to Linda and Jack, Elena, Bobby, Jeremy, Neil, Owen, Craig, Phil, Andrew, Don, Justin, Tamara, and not to mention Sol the cat. Jeremy, to Margaret and Enyo, Rob and Nicole, Emma, Jaden, Lauren, Mark, Peter, Laura, Diane, Marianne, Michael, Terry, Mary, Lee and Margaret, and finally, the final people I have to say to many thanks to, Laurie and Margaret, and to Ella and Frank, because without them we wouldn't be here. So thank you for listening to my rant, and I'd like to all you to raise your glasses and say thank you to yourselves for coming along today and for helping us enjoy this fantastic occasion. Thank you.
By choice. Mostly the choice of the women I date. And I can't say any more than I've had some great gifts, and I've met some really famous people, and I've been impressed so many times. But in Rick, I've found a giant among men, And it was my sister that introduced me to him, and I had no idea what was going on. I was just dragged in and sort of. They said, you need a job, man. You've been a saxophone player for so long. You need to get a job.
I'm going home tomorrow. I can say what I like. My name's Moira. I'm Heather's best friend, and we've been best friends for 20 years. Not just friends, but best friends. It was one of those situations where, when we found ourselves working together, making beds in a student residence and making a complete cock-up of the whole thing, we realised what good friends we were, and we've been friends ever since then. It's been hard being Heather's best friend for 20 years. If you'd like to raise a toast to me, you're very welcome to do that. Cheers! Thank you. Good night. I'm the woman that's responsible for getting Heather to places on time. If you know Heather, you'll know what a difficult job that is. I was responsible for Heather getting to her graduation on time, having been responsible for getting her to her final exams on time. I was responsible for getting her to the airport on time when she was flying out to Australia. So really, I'll take full credit for what's going on today. This morning I didn't need to get Heather ready to get there in time. She was so keen to get here, I didn't need to say very much. I think we're still talking to each other. It's been absolutely fantastic to have Heather as a best friend. The position is no longer vacant. If anybody who lives in Australia feels that because I live in Edinburgh that somehow the position's vacant, it's not. You can be 2IC if you like, but you're not going to be best friend. That's Priscilla we're talking about. It's been great being Heather's best friend. We've had so many laughs. We've talked about things that we wouldn't talk to anybody else about. We've shared conferences. We've cried over many a gin and tonic. We've had our arguments, there's no doubt about that, but we've made up very, very quickly because we understand each other. And when Heather said that she was going to come to Australia to work, just for a wee short time, I was gobsmacked. Because not long before that, Heather wouldn't even get in a plane, never mind a plane to Australia. And yet she took her courage in both hands and she came all this way. And if you've never been out of Australia, believe me, it is a long way to come. And she was absolutely smitten by the place and smitten by the people. This was before she met Rick, it has to be said. And when she came home, all she spoke about was Australia, Australia, Australia. Where it was warm, apparently. And the sky went on for miles and the people had a real can-do attitude to life. And sitting in rainy, cold Edinburgh, where people like to moan for a living, we all said, so, what's so important about that? I'll come back to that in a minute. It's been a real pleasure being Heather's friend. It's been frustrating at times, but it's been a real pleasure, and it's been a real privilege. You will all know about Heather's generosity. You will know about her talents. Elaine's already spoken a wee bit about that. You'll know about how generous she is with her time, with her compliments, with her kindness, and sometimes that can be frustrating because you want her to yourself and she just is good to so many different people. Perhaps you've been the recipient of her honesty. Oh, there was a... The job of a best friend is that I've had to go round and sweep up after her honesty sometimes. So I'm just telling you, if you want to be our new best friend in Australia, that's what you're taking on. But Heather speaks in an insightful and an incisive way. She speaks in a way that makes people think. And normally she manages to do it with a real sense of humour. And I think that's why so many folk have gathered here today. Heather has been there for me. Oh, here I go again. I was standing in the gazebo earlier on as the bridesmaid, greeting. So if you could just paste me out of any photos when I've got a face like a wet weekend, please do that. Heather has been at so many important occasions in my life. When my husband and I got married, she was the one that said, you can't wear your jeans to the church, you have to get a dress. She was the one that got me there in time. She was the one that took my mother-in-law out before I killed her the day before the wedding. When our son was born 10 years ago, you didn't go again. Everyone else had gone home, including my husband, who was very tired after the labour. And Heather is such a good friend that she's never let him forget that stuff. And just as I was settling down in hospital with this newly born, Heather turns up with bags full from Marks and Spencer. Oh. If you're not, Marks and Spencer. Let's raise a toast to Marks and Spencer. I think it's kind of like Davy Jones, but probably a wee bit higher class. And she came in with the most gorgeous wee outfits, which our daughter, 7 years later, wore as a baby as well. But she also, most importantly, came in with that thing that I most wanted. She came in with food. Don spoke today, the minister spoke today in his prayer about hospitality and about welcoming people to their home. Rick and Heather already do that. Heather is a very hospitable person. We found out so is Rick. He also spoke about being involved in the community. Well, they're already fully involved in their community, and I think that's to be absolutely commended and to be followed as an example. Heather, when our wee girl was born, Heather was here, and yet she made a big effort to come home in February, where I know you're all basking in the sunlight, but we're freezing in the post-Christmas depression. And she came home absolutely frozen, absolutely jet-lagged, just to help me and sit with me after my husband had gone back to work and our wee girl was just tiny. That's the kind of person that Heather is. I'm trying to stop crying. That's the kind of person that Heather is. She's our wee boy's godmother. And he hasn't spoken to her since she's left because he's so grief-stricken at having lost his Auntie Heather. I think he did have a conversation with her the other day, but Heather, you know what an important place you have in our lives. And he's got you now. So I want to thank you for being my best friend. You can take on any of these people you like, but you're my best friend and I love you. That's my first point. I'm a minister in the Church of Scotland. I have 3 points to make. Well, yeah, the second person I want to thank is Rick. Rick, you're just fantastic. You're such a lovely, lovely bloke. He has put up with a crowd of Scots coming and talking in some indecipherable language and singing outrageous songs and generally being a wee bit rude. And he's put up with us beautifully. And the most important thing about you, Rick, is the way that you make Heather happy. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I hope you and I will keep phoning each other occasionally, because if you want to talk about any of our bad habits, I'm happy to do so. So I want to thank Rick for making our Heather so happy and for giving her so much more in life than we could have provided for her in Scotland, I think. So thank you for that. I want to say as well, on behalf of the Scots, not all 5 million of them, but the folks that are here today, I want to say thank you for making us feel so welcome. We really have been so warmly welcomed, and so many people have given us a great big hug or a great big kiss when they found out who we are, because Heather's obviously spoken about the folks that are here, and we're so delighted that she's got such a lovely, lovely group of friends. We'd like to thank Australia for winning the Ashes. Anytime they do, we'd like to thank you for winning the Ashes. We'd like to thank you for Rolf Harris. As somebody who grew up in the 70s and the 80s, you have increased my cultural awareness so much more. And I'd like to say, tie my kangaroo down, sport. As somebody who was a student in the 80s and the 90s, I'd like to thank you for Neighbours. We much appreciate all of that. And as somebody who's the mother of 2 small children, I'd like to thank you for the Wiggles as well. There'll only be certain folk know who the Wiggles are, but if you're a Wiggle fan, you're a Wiggle fan. I think there's just a couple of things I want to say. Very